Welcome to the latest episode of the Shell Report, your weekly show through the 2025 college football season. I'm Ahmed Gafir, back again with Ben Strober and John Googs. And fellas, for the first time this season, we are recapping a Maryland football loss. Maryland is coming off their 24-20 loss versus Washington when Washington scored 24 points in the final 18 minutes, 33 seconds, and the 3 touchdowns over the final 14 minutes, 23 seconds of regulation to take this one in a heartbreaking fashion. Tale of two halves. Ben, what kind of stuck out to you about Saturday's loss?
It's tough. It's gut wrenching, and it kind of feels like somebody came to your birthday party and just popped all the balloons in a way. The way the first half and the second half differed. The one thing that concerned me the most, of course, and I'm not gonna really beat the dead horse here. I know Googs will get into this a little bit as well, but in the second half, especially, just very one-dimensional offensively, and as talented as Malik Washington has been, and as talented as I think he still is, and is going to continue to get better as the season goes on. If you are one dimensional offensively and you can't even really draw up enough running plays or scheme ways you can run the football effectively, it's going to be tough to play offensively because defenses are going to find ways, make adjustments throughout the game to stop you. And ultimately, that's what Washington was able to do. Additionally, you just feel like the team really lacked the killer instinct that you need, and that's kind of defined the way Maryland has really been. As a program, you feel like you have that signature win in your hands. You got a sold-out home crowd trying to improve to 5-0 for the first time in God knows how long, and it gets away from you. The killer instinct just quite wasn't there, and I feel like it was a game. Maryland just couldn't let that one get away, but it did. It'll have to find a way to bounce back. That's really the only way you can move on is respond and try to beat Nebraska.
Half was insanely frustrating. I mean, you have a 20-point lead heading into the middle of the third quarter, and you just completely choke it away. There were only 2 run plays by the offense the entire second half, and one was a scramble by Malik. The entire day, they went 20 rushes for 55 yards. That's only 2 3/4 yards per carry, and that's just something you cannot do when you have a lead in the second half. It looked like I was watching the Ravens all over again. So it's just you have to be able to have, like Ben said, have that killer instinct and just put a team away, and the offense could not do that in the second half.
Yeah, I thought, obviously, you guys talked about the second half there. Maryland was able to come out that first drive to really put them up 20-0. And it felt like, Maryland was in complete control of that game, obviously, for Maryland there. Tale of two halves, and a big part of that was Sidney Stewart, his ejection on what proved to be the second to last play of the first half. So he'll be available this upcoming week for Nebraska. But it felt like, once Sidney Stewart moved out, Trey Reddick moved from inside back to where we saw him his freshman season, back on the edge. CJ Smith, who ended up leading the team in tackles with 11, his second time this season he's led the team in tackles and first double-digit tackle game. But it felt like once that move happened, it felt Maryland's pass rush maybe wasn't as efficient. Tahir Mathis obviously got banged up there, but like you guys said, I thought that the tale of two halves, and really Maryland's inability to really control the clock, and I thought that was really what allowed Washington to get back into the game. And as mentioned, Maryland's touchdown drive, 9 plays, 75 yards. After that, time of possession, minute 20, minute 32, 254, and then minute 38 on the final drive that ended in downs. So Maryland, obviously, I think the big thing is, Maryland's inability to really control the clock. And that was what Washington, when they scored and got the ball right back after consecutive 3-and-outs, Washington was able to build that momentum. But a lot has been made about Maryland's, I wouldn't say inability this week to run the ball. It was what can be viewed as the decision to kind of get away from the run game. 2 runs after the Maryland went up 20-0 there. you know, especially when your offense is kind of sputtering a little bit, you kind of want to be able to lean on the ground game and lean on that rushing attack. And yeah, the big plays haven't been there, and I posted it on the Inside the Black and Gold account earlier on Thursday. But Maryland's the only team in the country, an FBS team that does not have a 20-yard rush or longer this season. So the inability to get the ground game going, sure, it's been a concern for Maryland, but there have been times when Maryland's been able to show that they can set up the ground game and they can at least use it to set up the pass. And we kind of just didn't see that much over the last 19 minutes of the game.
And it's so odd because typically, if you control both lines of scrimmages in a game, it's going to be really hard for you to lose because there's not much skill position players on the other team can do if you're just absolutely whooping on both lines of
Yep.
scrimmages. And Maryland on the defensive line is pretty much kicked butt in almost every single game they played outside of the second half. But to the point that you brought up the time of possession, those guys completely ran out of gas in the second half for good reason. And I'm not sure why the offensive line wasn't able to generate as much push as they had been in the past against this Washington team, and especially in the second half. But it's really rare where you see a team dominate like they did defensively on the line of scrimmage in the first half and then have everything fall apart because they couldn't control the other side of the ball. If Maryland could just control the line of scrimmage offensively, which I'm unsure if they'll be able to do throughout the remainder of the season, it would set them up really well because I feel like their defensive line is proven when they have guys out there, like if Stewart doesn't get ejected from that game, which ultimately I don't want to use that as an excuse for what happened in the second half, but they have a good enough defensive line and young talent there where they can control a game from a sense where the offense has to just do them some favors.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that, and obviously this will be a critical week, and I think it's not the fact that Maryland lost; it was how this loss unraveled. So big opportunity again back in the shell this weekend. Joe LeBou saw he posted over 40,000 expected in CQ Stadium this weekend for Oktoberfest for when Maryland hosts Nebraska. Another 3:30 kickoff on BTN. Nebraska heads to College Park, 4-1 overall, 1-1 in the conference play. They first loss of the season was against Michigan 2 weeks ago, 30-27 at home, coming off a 38-27 win against Michigan State. Also picked up 20-17 win against Cincy, Akron, Houston Christian, and obviously this will be the first matchup between the two since 2023. Fourth matchup all time. A couple key names to know, obviously, Dylan Raiola, Baby Mahomes, interchangeable nicknames right there. Running back Emmett Johnson, pair of wide receivers, Ja'Cory Barney, Dane Key, nickel corner, Malcolm Hartzog, who's will be critical watch to see if he's available this weekend. Honorable mention, all Big Ten. Missed the last 3 games though, so will be a big piece in the secondary. But like we said, big test this weekend. Both these teams come in with good passing offenses, and the Huskers with a stout secondary. Ben, what are you kind of keeping an eye on this weekend?
I'm really just keeping an eye on how this team is prepared to respond after what transpired last week. I'll keep it short and sweet because this is a team that is full of youth on both sides of the football. You have to find a way to bounce back and win this game. I feel like it's paramount that at least you can come out and put up a respectable performance from a sense because I think it's tough when you haven't been through the situation that Maryland football has just put in. You have to remember that so many of these guys that come in, especially locally, they don't really have the experience that comes with losing a game like that. They're used to dominating at every level they played at through most of their life. So you can't let that loss spiral your season out of control. I know you have a young team out there and they're not necessarily prepared or used to this feeling, but I really hope they've had a great week of practice and the game plan and the motivation that comes from Loxley and the rest of the staff is able to get them prepared to play urgent and desperate this week.
Yeah, I'll actually chip in because I want to touch on that point, and I'll kick it off to you, Googs. But you talked about the need for a strong week of practice, and I think really Maryland, Coach Locke, he talked about it this week. Dante Joyner, a guy that really I think everyone acknowledges a very questionable call with the seatbelt celebration there. But a guy like Dante Joyner, you could see him on the sideline, the emotions from that call and the subsequent play. And afterwards on Monday, just standing in front of the locker room, owning his stuff. So you saw that accountability piece. You see that those pieces, but again, to have it kind of materialize onto the field, I think will be really interesting. And kind of, really on that same point, how did this secondary respond? I think it'll be really interesting to see how Maryland does. I think the upgrade in the secondary, even coming off last week, where Damon Williams is able to have some key plays, downfield, couple. I believe that second touchdown on the post side alone was out of cover or out of position there, which really set up that big play. So just being able to learn from that and grow. But against a Nebraska team where they have multiple options. I mean, they have 5 players who have recorded 16 or more catches this season. So this is a multifaceted offense that you'll have to stop. And then Emmett Johnson, guy who nearly rushes for 100 yards per game, but also sits second on the team in catches as well. So he's a threat out of the backfield in the passing and rushing attack. So I think this will be a test for this secondary to really kind of pick up and kind of set the standard once again. Googs, what are you thinking?
We got to see can the offense put together full drives for a full 60 minutes. Last week in the second half, after they went up 20, they were 1 for 5 on third down. All right. I see this being a very close game, and in order to control time of possession, so your defense is not completely gassed by fourth quarter, you have to put those drives together so you can also put them and give them the success they need to stop the Nebraska offense so you can win the game.
I think that is fair. And with that, we will dive right into our Catalyst of the game, sponsored by Catalyst Hot Dog. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium, dry-aged, Black Angus, all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings, including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knots. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns because Catalyst has food for everyone. Make sure you find them in TQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Make sure to tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. And with that, we will dive into our score prediction and our Catalyst 2 Saturdays game. Ben, kick us off.
All right, first and foremost, you got to play with urgency if you're Maryland today. You have to be the more desperate team, but you can't play undisciplined. If there's one thing that's apparent throughout college football and really just any sport, typically the teams that come off a loss, and as devastating as it was for Maryland, the more desperate teams typically will have more success, especially playing behind a home crowd this weekend. I think that could play a big factor in this game. You absolutely have to be the more desperate team out there if you're this Maryland team. The way things went down, a sour taste in your mouth, it ultimately leads to the desperation factor that I'm hitting at here, but with the discipline factor being part of it, sometimes when you're desperate, you see guys that'll try to do too much at times. You don't want to see that. You still want to see people play within system. Malik continue to do what he's been doing. Don't make any stupid penalties out there. Don't need to do anything in terms of like trying to go after the quarterback too hard, hitting him low, hitting him late. So I think you got to play with some urgency, knowing how important this game is, but ultimately keep your head on straight. With that being said, I'm not sure if it'll be enough. I think the Huskers take it 30-24.
Catalyst to the game this week is simply going to be, can you keep the Nebraska defense honest? They're one of the best passing defenses in the country, only allowing 91.8 yards per game. The one thing I didn't like last week was we only really tried to take one deep shot, and it was nullified by a defensive holding. Mix in the run a little bit if you can get the run game going, and also take some deep shots to keep the Nebraska defense honest. I think that'll be your best shot at winning the game. However, like Ben, I don't think it'll be enough, but I think it'll be a good defensive game. But Nebraska will win 14-13.
A lot less points than I was predicting. I think this week is the turnover margin. Maryland has to win the turnover margin. That's something that Maryland's proven that they can do this year. But I think when you look at the potency of this Nebraska passing attack, in Maryland, that we've had Maryland's had some lackluster turnovers at times. It hasn't been many, and Maryland has won the turnover battle, I believe, in every game this season. But again, I think being able to do that against Nebraska, that means you're forcing Dylan Raiola to make mistakes, and that means true freshman Malik Washington is doing a good job taking care of the football. And I think in a home atmosphere like this, getting Nebraska rattled is a key thing. And I think something that we haven't mentioned is that this is Nebraska's first true road game this season. I mean, obviously they played at Arrowhead in Kansas City, and Baby Mahomes got a chance to play in one of his Patrick right there. But I think that this is a chance for Maryland to kind of capitalize. And like I said, this secondary, I think, has a chance to really bounce back over a tale of two halves. And Damon Williams, he definitely found the soft spots in the secondary last week. Dylan Raiola has the ability to really stretch the field with his arm strength. And again, the Huskers have multiple weapons, multiple guys to keep an eye on, and for this secondary that has multiple guys, including some second-year guys like Kerm Humes, Braden Lee, Lakai Rowland, all these guys who can kind of round out that rotation right there. Think Maryland needs to for those guys to kind of step up behind Dante Joyner and Jamari Glasker for Maryland to really take control. But we will see. Maryland is now a 7-point underdog for the second consecutive week. That will do it for the latest episode of the Show Report. Kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. on BTN this Saturday. Make sure you stay locked in over on InsideTheBlackandGold.net for all your Maryland news with Big Ten football officially here, basketball season around the corner, and recruiting picking up steam.